To order, it's 5:34 p.m. Did we get Councilman White on the line?
Yes.
Dustin, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us remotely. That doesn't mean we have a full quorum tonight. Appreciate everyone being here. As far as the opening ceremony, we'll ask Councilman Allen to give. Did you pray? I'll go ahead and say it. I haven't done it in a while. I'll go ahead and say the prayer, and we'll go ahead and recite the Pledge of Allegiance and go to that point. Our dear Heavenly Father, we come before Thee this night. We're grateful for the many blessings that Thou hast given us, for this opportunity we have to meet together as council and citizens to discuss the needs of our community. We're grateful for all the blessings that we receive, for the good people that we have here, for the efforts that are being made to improve our community. We ask a blessing upon those that work for the city, for our police and our firefighters and all those that serve, that they will be safe and protected. We ask this night that Thy Spirit will be with us to guide and direct our discussion, so we may make good decisions that will benefit those whom we serve. We are grateful for all things. We love Thee, and this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item, minutes from the last meeting. Are there any corrections or amendments to those?
I move we approve, Mayor.
Being none, so we have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Councilman Cloward. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. I was giving you a chance there, Dustin, so just in case you want to jump in.
I have to keep switching from mute to unmute. Sometimes it takes a little longer than it's worth.
No problem. We'll consider it an aye unless you say nay at some point. How's that?
That's good.
Okay. Public comment period. We do have, anybody in the audience can take up to 3 minutes to address the council. If you do so, we'd ask that you just come to the pulpit and state your name. Are there any tonight that would like to take that opportunity? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Committee appointments, we did get one response from the Rec Committee, and so I'd like to present that name to council tonight. Jeremy Johnson has submitted an application to be a part of the Parks Subcommittee, correct? Of the Arts, Parks and Rec Committee. And any questions or concerns? Do we have a motion to approve that appointment?
I'll move we approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Do we have any recognitions tonight? Okay. We do have a couple of public hearings. First of all, we'll go with the fiscal year 2023 budget closure. Josh, would you take that one?
Do we need to move into a public hearing? Or are you going to talk about it first and then?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
present it and then we'll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Council, we're here tonight to present the fiscal year 23 budget closure. So I'll hit some highlights there. You have a document in your packet from Rhonda Goodrich, our finance director. And so I'll read a couple things off there to explain how our budget went this year. Overall, the budget was, I'll just say, fantastic. 3% increase in expenditures, 3% increase in revenues. So to explain that a little bit, there we do have a balanced budget like we're supposed to. So when we say 3% increase in one, it has to match the other. So to explain a little bit about that, in the water fund, there was a realized income of 335, and these are approximations without getting to the final numbers, but approximately $335,000, which was 61% below the original budget. This was due to some personnel and finance or software changes. The various departments were not charged as much as was budgeted for water usage. But overall, the water fund was profitable, and we don't anticipate anytime soon, but rate increase should be something the city should look at some point in the future. The sewer fund, there was a realized income of $157,000, which was 131% over the original budget. Sanitation fund, revenue remained relatively flat. Cost of sanitation services continue to increase, and a revised contract has been signed with that. We have that on the agenda tonight. Overall, in our general fund, on the next page, general revenues, originally we budgeted for $9.1 million. Final budget came in at $9.3 million, so that's a great increase there. Then our expenditures, I really want to pay attention to that one. If you look at the expenditure sheet, everything came in below. So we expected to spend $1.4 million, we spent $1.3. Public safety, $3.1, we only spent $2.8. Highways and public improvement, expect to spend $840, spend $830. And we'll just go down, we went down every one except for the transfers to capital projects. That's a good one to go up, because that's money taken from the general fund to our capital projects. So that one went from $747,000 to $1.6 million. And again, that's so we end up with a balanced budget. So overall, that is a wonderful budget to look at there. Everybody came in under what they expected, except for our excess money that we were able to transfer to our capital projects. Next, on the ARPA funds, we still have $428,000 available there. And I'm just hitting some of the highlights here. Capital projects, we had in our original budget spent $7.7 million. We only spent $3.8 million on that one. And again, we have a lot of money budgeted for those projects. Water utility, income over expenses, $865,000, $335,000. That's where we ended. Overall, I just want to report that the budget is extremely healthy. 3% over what we anticipated to bring in, and we're keeping our expenditures below the estimates. Staff's been doing a wonderful job of making the best use of our dollars so we can plan for the future, so we can increase our public infrastructure, as well as our other areas in the city and how they're functioning as well. Are there any questions?
No, just applaud the employees and especially Rhonda putting this together, et cetera. I think it's awesome. Great to be in this situation.
And I do want to, I'd like to say, thank you, Councilman Bismarck. I do want to thank Rhonda Goodrich, our finance director, for preparing these and working hard to make sure much on that. Thank you.
Seeing no questions from the council, would entertain a motion to move into a public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Clower. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll consider ourselves in a public hearing. Are there any comment from the public regarding the 2023 budget closure? Questions? Comments? Seeing none.
We go out of public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to resume regular session. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll consider ourselves back in regular session. Next public hearing item, Roosevelt City fee schedule amendments. We have Edwin and Rose on my list. Who else needs to?
They'll look at sanitation to discuss.
Okay, and sanitation. Do we, oh yeah, well, actually, we probably do. Now, how do we do that with the budget closure? Do we have to have a motion to accept or close the 2023 budget? Let's do that first.
I move we close the 2023 budget.
You let Booze get that one, and you're the one that reminded me.
I got some clarification on the vote there to close the fiscal year 2023
Roll
budget
call.
with the numbers presented.
With the numbers presented. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll second that.
we have a second by Councilman Baird. Do we need a roll call on that one? I just do, okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We'll consider it closed. Thank you. Now we'll move forward to the fee schedule. So who would like to, how would you like to do this? Mr. Ray?
I'll kick it off and then we'll just go down the list. Thank you, council members. So periodically from time to time, we have to amend our fee schedule. This is done through public hearing and then council approval with the different fees that we charge the individuals, residents in our city. So tonight we have 3 different amendments that are being proposed. One from our recreation department that we presented from Evan Butterfield, our assistant department director. Is that a Christian style, Evan? Yes, recreation director. I apologize.
So the assistant recreation department head, if you want to be specific.
Thank you, Hugh. The next item will be from the animal shelter division manager, Rose. Arnold, I apologize, I just yelled at Brock. Thank you, Rose.
I'm still getting used to it too.
And then the final one, we do have a sanitation, as we've been working with our sanitation providers, K&K. We wanted to modify those fees as well. So I will turn the time over first to Mr. Butterfield.
All right. So with the sports here, what we're looking to do, I'm not sure what was provided for you guys. For the recreation side, we're looking to see if we could have more of a parameter for fees to work with. Adults being such as like the 25 to 75 for a fee, teens 200 to 450, as you see right there, and then for youth 10 to 75. Point of this just so that we could have a little bit more time for registration periods and give us a little bit of freeway to start to increase the different recreation activities we'd like to offer for the community. Where we're coming up with some fun here is, well, where we get something together and an idea, then we're like, okay, now we got to get to council. That might not be for another month. If we're trying to get things going sooner than later, it might be a little low on time to get that. This will also.
I was gonna ask, so what you're saying is this gives you leeway when you start a new badminton team or something, whatever, badminton program, that you have a fee schedule, you work within those parameters?
Within those parameters only, correct.
Okay.
And then we would still retain what we still have up there, so we're not eliminating the rest. It's just to give some flexibility as we're adding more programs in.
Would you still be required to justify the fee to council? Because I understand having to have some flexibility, and I trust you, but at the same token, I'm worried about a blank check here.
Well, I think my thought is that we could just, as far as what we're approving, we would approve basically a fee up to $75. So I would think if 75 is unreasonable as the price for any of these things, then maybe think about lowering it. But I personally think those prices are fair.
Yeah, I didn't say they were fair. Like I said, just a little concerned about, people may wonder rhyme or reason why it was 75 instead of 25.
That's true.
Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Points too.
I don't know if they need to come to council. I'm not anti this necessarily. I just want to make sure that it is reasonable. I don't know if it just needs to go like to the city manager just to double check, or maybe you and Aaron. I don't know.
And to me, that we've been talking about these fees and everything being on the fee schedule, and it is making it a little bit difficult. I look at the team recreation fee, and for example, we had the 3-on-3 basketball tournament that we tried to do for 4th of July. I think we set the rate at around 200 or 250 a team, but it's only a 3-person team. So if we do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament and it's $200, that's $65, $67.50 a person, which I don't know that they're going to pay. Now, if we had that at $120, or $150, people might participate. But I know we didn't get very much participation maybe one or two teams sign up because it was $250 for a 3-person team. And so I don't know that, and this to me, it's hard because it kind of paints us into doesn't give us the flexibility that we want. I get what Don's saying, we don't necessarily want to blank check, but that's why we have to trust our staff also to know what they can and can't charge and what they should and shouldn't charge. Because if they charge too much, we're not going to get participation.
Yeah.
And if we charge too little, then next time we can raise the rate a little bit.
Adjust.
Yeah.
And all of these too would be based off what we're seeing from, like, what are the costs of different equipment too. So we're not just gonna like throw a dart at the blackboard and say, let's charge it that. We will be doing our research, making sure, okay, how much did it cost before? What do competitors on different cities charge as well? It would put thought into it as well.
I like the mayor's point, though, if you have a three on three, it doesn't seem reasonable to have $200, so I think there needs to maybe be some flexibility that way. And I trust you and Aaron and Josh, I think, to come up with the number, so I understand trying to give you some leeway, so you have to come.
Lower, on the lower side.
Yeah, or something.
One thing that this came about is discussing with Aaron and Edwin is flag football. They want to create a new flag football league, and the idea behind this is this gives them the leeway to start things going. If it's successful, we find out, okay, this works great, we need to charge this number for individuals, then it will come back and get its own specific line item for the future. So this is a temporary placeholder so we can figure out what is the appropriate amount. What's it truly costing us to run the program? How can we make it long-term successful? So that was another idea behind this. It's a temporary placeholder until we know we can make this in every year. But I do want to point out the idea behind the team one for the smaller events, a wonderful idea. Because I was one of those individuals that didn't play in the 3-on-3 because.
And that raises one other question. When we do volleyball tournaments every year, what is the fee for a 6-person team? Because it might even be less than the $200. Because it's like $25 a person.
Yeah, it's about 25.
So that's $150.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we might want to start out at about $100 for the smaller teams, depending on the sport.
So even just having like a frame of like 150 on the team would be a good parameters to consider at least.
That's what I would do.
And again, the idea is if this becomes permanent recreation activity, it'll come back and get its own line item with council. This is what flag football truly costs going forward, rather than being just a recreation fee.
And then aside from this, if there's any other questions on the rec, transfer to golf here. On the golf side, they have a new activity, foot golf. It's kind of like soccer golf, if you're unsure what that is there. And he has some fees on there already set, $6 per 9 holes, and ball rentals $3 per 9 holes. He has also, reading word for word from Aaron, if we got any questions, it's soccer golf. Aaron and Mike, the superintendent, have everything worked out to minimize course damage and interference with regular golf play already. So they've already been considering how that would kind of connect in with what's already happening at the golf course. Okay.
Sounds good.
Any questions? Okay.
Thanks, Edwin. Oh, so I guess the suggestion, I guess we'll verify after the public hearing. Rose.
Apologize, I have this on my phone because I didn't get a chance to get turned off. But so what we are proposing is lowering the microchips to 15. We actually thought that we had this through last August, but there was miscommunication. I was out with COVID and Alan presented for me and there was miscommunication. So we have been charging that $15 since last August because we thought it got approved, but we're kind of just going through the re-approval process to get it approved. So microchips cost the shelter about $7.50 currently. On the memo, I put $7.50 to $10 to allow for that increase in case the price does go up. But if we just charge 15, we're still making a profit on it. Ultimately, microchips benefit a shelter as well because we can automatically contact the owner to let them know their pet is there or even avoid the shelter, so less impounds. And hopefully increase of owner claims. That's why we'd like to keep that lower.
And how long does it take to do a microchip on an animal?
If it's a compliant animal, 15 seconds. The actual implantation of it, there is a form that they fill out. The animal shelter registers it for them. So the time it takes the animal shelter to register is probably around 1 to 2 minutes. So it's a fairly quick process unless you have a difficult animal that you have to restrain and they don't like needles. It does happen occasionally, but usually from the time a person walks in, say they want their animal microchip, they're in and out within 10-15 minutes.
Okay, and then the only other thing I see is the cats, says 25, so if we're gonna do the dogs, we might wanna.
Yes, there should be both for 15.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making that open. Did you have a question, Don?
No, that was my question. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, any other
Questions?
questions? Okay, thanks, Rose.
Thank you.
And then you take the sanitation.
Then finally, we could work with our sanitation providers, K&K, and they have some recommendations that they sent to the city to modify some of our fees in our fee schedule. And so we've incorporated those as recommendations for council to approve as well. So again, these did come from K&K, and we are recommending that they be adjusted appropriately as well.
So we were thinking 1950, but it just shows 1940. Is that correct?
It was 50.
I thought it was 1950.
That's accurate based on the table that I was given.
And that is what Rhonda,
Okay, because I thought it was, the 50 cents is really what we would be getting on the administrative side to actually get that. So I wonder if we approve the 1950.
And make sure, if we adjust it to 1950, we need to make sure all the other numbers, they might be adjusted. If she used a formula, they might be calculating.
We can go with her formula. It's 10 cents. It's not.
And so these are the numbers collected by the city? Is
Yes,
that correct? Because right now, 3 yards, I believe, are 72, not the
correct.
70.
But we had so what we have on top of the charge, just for the administration fees and things that we're doing, we used to have a little bit higher margin because we were doing more of the administrative, and now the K&K's agreed to take care of the majority of that administrative. We've lowered our costs. So as your costs have gone up, we've tried to cut our costs back to still keep our rates fairly reasonable for the residents. And so, yeah, the 3 yard probably has about a 3%, 3% increase on top of what you would charge, just so that as we administer that and bill for it and everything else, it's covering our costs for stuff in the envelope, stamps, all of that other stuff. Where it used to be more like 5%, I believe. So we're about half of where we used to be, or less. Cool. Any other questions for
No.
Mr. Bailey? Seeing none,
I move we go into public hearing for the Roosevelt fee schedule.
based on, do we have a second?
Second that.
Second by Councilor Yes.
Yep, sorry, jumped the gun.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Apologize. There is one more other recommendation on here to change, and that's in the stormwater fees.
And these are going up because,
It's the same, we've been charging these fees for.
oh, it's just not been in our base.
In there.
Okay.
Nice, they're not going up.
Yes, I'm not going up there, but apologize.
We're just, okay,
Now I move we go into public hearing.
okay, and we have, still have a second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll consider ourselves in a public hearing. Are there any here that would like to discuss or make comment to questions of those fee schedules? Seeing none,
I move we go out of public hearing.
okay. Second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. We'll consider ourselves back in regular session. Do we have
I move that we accept the Roosevelt fee schedule amendments with the fees provided with the change to the team recreation fee to start at 100
Okay, and the cats?
and the cats to 15. Thank you.
Did we get that? Do we have a motion to accept with the modifications as defined? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Cloward. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Next, we have the Roosevelt City Duchesne County District Memorandum of Understanding versus, now, there's one thing that needs to be clarified first and foremost, and that is that these are not memorandum of understanding, these are actual contracts.
That's correct. And for the SRO agreement, state code specifies. I'm going to address them backwards to where they're on the schedule. That's where I start with the SRO agreement. We do have a draft put together for that. And there have been a few meetings in the city, and then Mr. Young also was here and kind of made a presentation on what the school district wanted. I would like to point out both for the council's benefit and for Mr. Young's, there are a few things in the current draft that are different than what the school district was asking for. My recommendation to the council at this meeting is that it not be approved yet. I think we still need input from the school district. They just got this version today. We would like to hear back from them. I think that there is room to negotiate on some of these things. I also think that we need some additional input from the police department. Chief Watkins isn't here. Lieutenant Tucker has sat in on the meetings that we've had, but I think we are going to need input from both of them, especially once we get feedback from the school district to come up with a final draft. The things I'd like to point out, though, that are different than what was asked for are the starting and end dates. The current version of the agreement is that services would start on the first day that classes are in session in the fall and would end on the last day that class is in session in the spring. Based on a request from the police department, services at extracurricular activities are specifically exempt from this agreement, and the city's desire, or our recommendation to the council on behalf of the police department, is that those be addressed in a separate agreement that we would probably do at the same time as this one. There was some concern about the number of hours that would be committed to in this agreement and how those would be covered. The current version of the agreement is a commitment of 30 hours per week. And the last one, the extracurricular activities, I already pointed out. I think that that's all of them that I know the school district has made specific requests for, that what was put in the current version is not exactly the same. There are a lot of additional things that hadn't been discussed with the district. We need their input on them. Some of what goes into this agreement is mandated by Utah State Code. In the agreement, Jason, it cites the code. Hopefully that makes it easy for you guys to look at and see why we're putting some of this in there, and it's because the legislature says that we have to. So on those things, there's not really anything that we could do about it, but if it's not specifically addressed in the code section that I cite in the agreement, I think that the police department, specifically in the city generally, would like your input and to continue to talk. So again, for the council, my recommendation would be that we table it to the next meeting and give staff some time to continue to work with the district.
And so we don't necessarily need an action on it, but are there any thoughts from the council, items of discussion that Grant has mentioned that maybe you would like clarification on, or you'd like to discuss further.
I'm just curious, since school started, what's happening in the meantime?
We're still operating under the arrangement that had been made before. The police department does have an SRO in the schools, providing the same services that we were before. The level of services could change depending on what's agreed upon between the city and the district with the new agreement. But my understanding, I'd like to hear from Jason, it's different, but is that we're doing the exact same thing that we did last year.
Right. There's no specific SRO though. We just call dispatch and whoever's on call comes.
Do we have an officer in the school for a certain amount of time
So,
currently?
right, Clint's been doing a lot of it, but he's not required to be at any school for a certain amount of time or anything else. And then if they have a crime or something, then they call dispatch and whatever officers on is the one that responds for that. So that person doesn't necessarily take care of that. What this contract would do would we'd have a specific SRO that is in the schools all day long as kids are there.
For at least 30 hours during the day.
Next 30 hours.
So I'm trying to think, school starts around 8 o'clock, gets out at 3 o'clock.
On Monday through Thursday, but Friday's a short day,
Uh-huh.
and then there may be some.
So that's 7 hours plus.
Still, if you're there the whole week, it's still over the 30 hours.
It is. That's what I was gonna say, because
It's about 32. It's about 32 to 33 hours. 6 hours probably if you worked Monday through Friday, including the half day.
Well, the Friday though is like 2 hours shorter, isn't it? It's like 12:30 there, or 1 o'clock, I guess.
So that would be 5 hours, so you're at 33 hours.
So, and that might be a negotiation part.
I was gonna say, that's something that we have to look at least. I know one of the concerns with the ball games and things like that, we can still provide a reserve officer. Some of those, I guess, is what was explained to me, but
Right.
it might not be that same officer that's in the school. Yeah. Okay.
And again, there's a lot of room for negotiation on this deal. What we have done is looked at the requirements in state code, the request from the city, and then the police department concerns, came up with this, and we're wanting to work off of this refinement of what works.
Yeah, Jason, just a question. How does this work on your end? Is this something you put in front of the school board for approval, or is this something you make the determination on?
Yeah, we would go to the school board to get
Okay.
the approval on this one.
Okay, it might not hurt, well, it just depends on what you, just to get them, get their feelings as well, just to see it and make sure it's along the right track. If it looks like something that they would,
Right, yeah, we just got this at 2 o'clock today, so we haven't
Sure.
really had time to even look at anything yet to do any of that.
and is it okay that we're still running under the old agreement until I know it's taken a little longer than what we would have anticipated, but I think in the long run, at least everything will be addressed and it'll be a much cleaner, better.
Yeah, I don't
agreement.
see any alternative to that.
Okay,
Yeah, we'd want to talk through some things here, I think.
okay.
And as Jason said, they did just get it this afternoon. That's why I wanted to point out the things that I know that the school district would be interested in. The city is kind of not exactly the same.
I agree with the mayor. I don't think we need a motion. We'll just move on to the next thing
Okay.
and leave it.
And going back to the facilities use agreement, there's not a draft put together yet. There are still several things being discussed. And the biggest one is the pool has been discussed a lot. But we feel like in the facilities use agreement is the best place to address the golf course and also some reciprocal use issues. The city would like to have something in the agreement where the city sports are allowed to use one of the gyms in the schools for certain periods of time. And we still need to flesh out exactly how that would work. And so because there's still some unanswered questions and some kind of floating ideas, it's not to the point yet that I've been able to draft. But we're probably getting close. to where I can reduce something to writing, share with the school district, and then again, we need to have some additional conversations.
Some of the thoughts, and I can expand on a few of those briefly. Just, with the golf course, there's a certain block of time that the school would need to have access to the golf course during golf season, things like that, certain hours. And we don't want to really change anything there, but we want to say, we're also requesting the school district pay a proportionate share, and whatever that ends up being, they come with a proposal to us saying, we think this is the amount. We've also done our research. Edwin has been very instrumental in dialing in exactly what it's costing us to have the swim team at the pool. And, we're pretty close, I think, on those numbers now, with where we feel you need to be, where we feel we need to be. But we could, for that price, whatever it is, that cost that the school would pay to the city, the golf course would be incorporated in that. You would have a set amount of time that you would be able to use the golf course. You'd have a set amount of time you'd be able to use the pool. But then on the city side, we would like to have the same thing, a reciprocal block of time from possibly November to April, where we would have access to the gym for a couple nights a week through those months, so that we could host. We would still pay, the $15 for an adult league or something like that per person. We would like to be guaranteed, just like we would guarantee the school district these blocks of times for our facilities. We would like to see the school district block out a set of time, or a specific time that Roosevelt City could run volleyball, basketball, dodgeball, things like that during those months. And I think we've already kind of worked that out. It hasn't been we've kind of been, it's been a little more difficult, I guess, to find some time at certain times, and we could work some of those out. But to have our basketball and volleyball and dodgeball and things, so that it's a reciprocal type of a thing. So.
On that one, there also is another less interesting issue that I'm still trying to work through, and that's how insurance coverage is gonna work with both the school's insurance and the city's, and on both of these, whether the activity is occurring in the school or in one of the facilities that the city owns. So still got a little bit more work to do on that to make sure that it's all straight and addressed in the contract.
Jason, do you see on your end, would there be a problem with us having a block of time where Roosevelt City had access, and it wouldn't matter which gym, as long as we had a gym we could work with through that time period where it's the cold months and we want to have some activities that we can plan on and schedule and know that we have some availability?
Yeah, that's been my understanding how it's been working anyway. So our principal
so it'd be pretty
will
easy.
schedule those blocks of time, and so our teams use our school, our kids use the facilities for various teams, but we'll try to block that out so that we have that worked out well when junior jazz or whatever comes in.
Sure.
So that's been the way I assume. I think that's how it is working
Perfect.
already.
And so to put it in writing, I think it would be great, because we all know that councils change. Hopefully your position doesn't change for a good long time.
Right.
That you're there for a while, but we know we're pretty transient up here. And so we just want to make sure that those things are in place moving forward, so that the verbal agreements and things that we're accustomed to become, contracts or written things that are perpetuated in the future, no matter who's sitting in these seats.
Yeah, and our first concern there would just want to make sure that all of our programs have the adequate time that they need, to run the school function. And but it's been working out to where there's time for everything as it is. So I would anticipate that should be easy. And our proposal is that we would provide those facilities for free, no charge at all for our youth, little fee for adults.
Sure.
But then we would pay full price for the use of the swimming pool. So we felt pretty good about that offer, honestly.
Yeah, and so and that's what we're talking about. The price that we're talking about for the pool and things would be the pool and the golf course. And I think, the price that you'd set, we felt like was about 2/3 of what the actual cost to us was. But I think that's something I feel the council's inclined to do. And so, at least pretty close. And so I think we're really close on those things, and we can get that drawn up for our next meeting. And any thoughts from the council on any of those things?
No, I can't vote on this one since I'm on the school board, but I appreciate the conversation. That's all I'm saying. Because I think what you said was important, Mayor, is that we're trying to get a contract so that going forward, we both have an understanding that feels fair to everybody. Everyone knows what the expectation is, and it's not this word of mouth. And then, because a lot of times word of mouth, and things don't happen the way you want, and then people get upset, and there's struggles with providing those services at times you want, et cetera, where now we can guarantee that. So,
Well, there's no further questions or comments. We'll go ahead and move forward. Thanks, Grant, for that. And Mr. Bake and Mr. Claiborne, we'll move to the secondary irrigation system phase 3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So before us tonight, we have our secondary irrigation phase 3. We would like to award the contract for our engineering program. So Jones and will help the city come up with an application for this grant proposal. And on June 29th, we were awarded a $2 million grant. The payments for our engineering services would actually come from this grant itself. Jones and Mill helped us prepare this grant. They have quite a bit of knowledge with this. As I said, they helped us prepare it. They know our master plan very well. The numbers are up there, as you can see, and it's the fiscal impact will be from the grant itself. So tonight we're seeking approval from the council to award the engineering services for this $2 million secondary irrigation phase 3 grant or project, not grant, project to Jones and DeMille to be our engineers.
is this last council meeting, didn't we have a map or two, maybe two councils, they showed a map of where it was going in? Is that correct, Ryan? Seems like you had a map. In one of the areas, Councilman White brought up already had like some irrigation. Is that changed, or are we still?
It'll be changing some. This is just getting an engineer selected for the project. Then when they're
Okay.
selected, we'll get deeper in the weeds as far as the design and make sure we hit all the areas.
Location.
So will the council be a part of determining where that goes? Or is
Yes.
that should
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is just to have them be the engineers. The design and everything will come back with council.
So the engineering fees, what we're approving tonight, basically, is the $236,000.
Correct. It will come out of the grant itself.
And then the project cost is a guesstimate, and then they'll come back and solidify those numbers. But they're saying $236,000, which is 11.8% of the total project cost, which is usually engineering fees are 10 to 12%. So they're right in there. Mhm. At least that's what we're asking to.
I wasn't listening to the whole thing. Our proposal's for 189.6.
Okay.
So this two.
236.
That's kind of what was prepared for the funding application. And then, in our proposal, we got through and we nailed down what we think the work will actually take.
So that's about 9%.
Is for 189,600. So
And over 3%.
Well, that's even better.
I would like to know, in your packet, the memo does have the correct.
Right, I saw that. That was my.
So basically, what we're approving tonight, the applicant's in for is 189.6 to move forward.
That's
If it is,
will be
yeah.
engineers.
I move we approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is unanimous. Next item. The Wills Land Easement Agreement, talk to them. We're gonna push that one to the next one, and this won't affect paving schedule down there. I do have a meeting with him tomorrow. It sounds very optimistic. and we'll get that taken care of by next meeting, so we'll push past that one. Cottonwood Creek Trail right of way and easements, let's go ahead and talk about those, Brian. So just FYI, there is a list. There's a list of easements and they're basically cookie cutter. And so we have, can you? We want this. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So tonight, what we'll focus on, and this looks like Moon Lake Electric, but we have Moon Lake Electric, School District, Benson Trust, UBTA, UBET, the Meadows of Roosevelt HOA, the Karen Commercial, and Robert West. So these will all be the same. Those 7 entities will have this exact easement. So if you end contract, basically.
Yeah, what we have here, so we've been constructing the nature park, but beyond the nature park, we gotta go through all the land. We connect strata to the hospital. And we have 10 total, but we have 7 ready. So hopefully tonight we recommend getting them approved and passed through on these 7. And they're all the same, other than the name on them, obviously, which the mayor just hit on all of them. If you scroll down a little bit, well, the right of way is gonna be 15 feet. And that's for the construction of the trail, for us to do whatever we need to do to get that trail to go through. There is a section in there too where it talks about where they can't construct a building or shed or anything like that that will encroach on our easement too as well. So it's pretty basic. But they're all the same. It has been approved by a grant. City attorney's looked them over and he's passed them off. So is there any questions?
I'm kind of familiar, but do we have a map to kind of show where it's at?
Yes. Here we go. We have an east side and a west side. This is the west side. Yep. I know that probably doesn't make sense to you. Look at it. There's the east side right there.
Just a little bit. Thank you, Steve.
And the top left corner is where Moon Lake is, and then it jogs to the south a little bit. That'll be Ed Blanchard. Then it crosses State Street. So State Street, I don't know if you see it right there to the left.
I know we have a grant to go underneath State Street. When does that grant expire?
Next year. Yeah, we actually can't start design until this fall. So,
That was cool that, I think it was our engineers that helped us in staff with that application that allowed us to go underneath the street.
yeah,
So it's a $900 and some $1,000.
just under $1 million.
That's awesome.
So we're getting these together, so we're ready for the spring. Obviously, this year, for the whole project, that phase 1, we kind of split it too. We kind of made the nature park the phase 1, so we can get it taken care of. And then next spring, we're hoping to have all these easements and right of ways done so we can proceed forward and start blazing trail.
And so tonight, we're just asking for the approval of the easement so that we can get these signed with those landowners and secure that.
Is there any cost at all?
Just engineering, surveying.
So they're not charging us anything for the easements?
It's very minimal. It's not.
Okay.
Cost. They were all budgeted in the project already.
Okay. I move we approve them.
Does he need to name all of them or?
I did name, so I will
All
just
7.
Robert West, Karen Commercial, the Meadows of Roosevelt HOA, UBTA, UBET, Benson Trust, School District, Moon Lake Electric.
You might want to give that list to Sunshine.
Just for the record, I think I'm good to vote, but I'm just stating I work for Moon Lake.
Actually, I work for the school district, so technically I probably shouldn't vote either.
Well, you can vote, just state your
See conflict?
You can still vote.
Okay.
prohibits you.
Yeah, no, I should be okay on this one.
So,
But I do work for, yeah, my motion stands, but I do work for the school, I'm a school board member on the Duchesne County School District, so.
we
Want
have
to state
a
that.
stated conflict by Councilman Roosevelt for the school district and a stated conflict for Councilman Allen with Mirror Lake Electric. Mr. Roosevelt has made the motion to approve those 7. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Finally, the lights.
This is Roosevelt City Sports Complex lighting bid.
Ryan said he'd introduce it, so.
Yeah.
This is Jeff with Johnson Mail, and I do like to address a lot. It's hot off the press too. We just got, 2. Is that right? So we know on the sports complex, on the project, this was an important piece of the puzzle, right? We wanted to know what the number was, so we could proceed forward with everything else. So we received 2. Musco lighting is 1.169. I don't know if you can see that up there on the top, right? Is what it came in for. Jones and Mill kind of figured at 1.355, so they did come under.
Now, is this Dave or did Dave work for another?
So this is Musco, so the representative there is Aaron,
Okay.
and then Dave works for Quantum Lighting.
And they got.
And their bid is through Codell
Okay.
on the state contract, and their bid was $1,173,500.
Also
it's
very close.
roughly $4,400 different.
Is there a preference one way or the other?
Dustin, you wanna?
Yeah, Dustin, get up here.
We currently go with Musco.
Yes,
So obviously, I think that's leaning towards Musco.
we currently run Musco. We haven't had any issues. I want to say they put in our current lighting in 2010. We have never had to work on them whatsoever. There was one thing that was underground, but it had nothing to do with what they did above ground. Their lights, we never had any issue with that. So longevity of it, they've worked good and they're just fine. So Musco would be a great option to consider.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And apples to apples.
As best as we can get, yeah. And this is full turnkey, so this is installed and everything, all the electrical. So, which is 99% lighting, but then we do have some stuff.
When you planned on lighting before the 1355, with that and what Armor is doing, did that get us to the exact 3552? Because I know there was some other, we're gonna talk about it in the next one, the change orders, and this is 100 and, $86,000 different.
So this one I had taken, so that $2,074,000 is Armor's contract for all that work. And then here's the lighting, and I should have changed the wording there too, but that is the quote from Musco, the 1169.
Yes.
And then the 55,311 is the latest number I've seen from Wood Lake. You don't have a signed contract, but
Okay.
that's right where it should be. So adding all those together would put you just under 3.3.
Perfect. And then
And your funding is 3.5.
and I did see that you added in the 50 and 50, so I think that, which is
Yes,
because of the 3.6.
the counties.
Right, and I think,
Yes.
that's appropriate to show that way, because it is, but I think we as council need to go to those entities and make sure that we get that funding and see if they'll honor that agreement. And it was a verbal, it was a motion in their, meetings, and so nothing hard, written out, but
If we can get that, then that gives us 300,000 to work with which is a decent portion. And maybe we still do a little something, but anyway, I'm super glad to see that number, and it does give us a little bit of
It's nice to get some good news.
Yeah. Any other questions from council? Sorry to take up so much time.
I just wonder about Councilman Cloud or Councilman Allen, since they utilize that if they had need.
We're just talking about the lights right now.
Yeah, just the lights. Any thoughts on Musco or Quantum
Are
or?
they gonna, you talked a little bit about, because the new ones will be controlled by an app, will they be able to incorporate it?
They better, yeah. Both of them said they would be able to, so.
I know Dave, that was one of his selling
Yeah.
things. He said he would update everything and it would everything up there would work the same.
And Aaron verbally told me as well that he could do that. He can update our system so it can be run on a parameter of when the lights come on, when they shut off from the phone remotely, which is super important.
Yeah, and I do need that app.
Of course.
So let's make that the award contingent on them following through with the verbal agreement. Because that could be worth $4,400. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Could be worth more than that. So, any thoughts on that?
The only other question I had was, are the bids identical in terms of what they're providing? Like there's no, other than the app maybe?
They both provide.
They're close, so the lighting systems are slightly different. And so, obviously there's different small features depending on which one you go with, but they serve the same purpose. It's not like one is dramatically more convenient than the other, is that appropriate to say? So, like I said, they're slightly different, so I hesitate to say they're exactly apples to apples, but they serve the same purpose and meet the same parameters.
You said install.
Install.
They both bid off of a design you provided, so
Yep.
they're meeting the specs you provided, not specs, but the design features that you've basically outlined.
Yeah. I think the only thing I'd probably recommend is where we have just recently seen these, the motion you make should probably be contingent upon both Grant looking at it and then staff just reviewing as well, just to make sure there's nothing in there that we don't like or whatever.
Subject to legal counsel review.
Yes.
And staff, yeah, staff. Okay.
Based on that, I move we go with Musco then. I trust our people, Dustin there. I would say go with Musco with the contingents that it's looked at by staff and council.
And that they fulfill their.
And they fulfill their app verbal agreement.
I'll text him right now.
Okay. So we have a motion, is that fairly clear? Okay. And a second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, motion is unanimous. Thank goodness. On the next item, change orders. Change orders. We don't want to change orders until we know what the lighting is going to cost.
You want me to take it? Okay, so change orders, hot topic. Now that we got a clear picture of what our budget looks like, obviously we're trying to stick with that certain number. Scroll down just a little bit. Oh wait, we got them all in there, huh? Nope, a little more. A little more. Bottom right there. Okay, so if there's something that's been knocked off the list that you'd like to see back on there, feel free, but kind of getting the temperature from everybody, we took some things off. So right now, this is the 4 biggest ones that are still lingering out there. The mold strip for sure is one because we can't do a mold strip afterwards. So we either want it or we don't on that. We can't have that later under a fence. So if you look to the right, here's the different prices of the mold strip. So it's 2 foot by 1 foot, 49,500. And then 18 inches by 6 inches is 45,500. And then to the skinniest pad of cement, the foot by half a foot, 41,000.
So when they say 2 foot, is it 2 foot wide and 1 foot deep?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They was concerned that the smaller we go, that may crack.
Yeah.
Or would crack, according to emails.
See, I was thinking in my mind, 2 foot deep and 1 foot wide, because I'm like, why would you need a 2 foot strip?
Yeah.
But, even a foot by foot.
I do have a question, if it's all right, Dustin. Does your mower, would anything that's sticking out hit the fence? Like, how close can you get to the fence?
You can hug up to pretty close. So,
Okay, I just asked that because if we went with the skinnier one, I just don't want to be nailing the chain
Yeah,
link.
6 inches deep, I get. Even a foot by foot. I was thinking 12. Yeah.
Do you have, most trips out there anywhere?
no, it's called kills all.
And how effective is that? That's not, I mean, how much of a pain is that?
We have to do that once a month.
Once a month?
Oh, yeah, at least, because the weeds just grow up there. Well, you have to do it though, because it looks terrible when the weeds grow up through the chain link fence.
Yeah, because the grass won't, I mean, when you kill the grass, obviously the weeds are gonna come right in.
The thing with kills, like, be careful too, it leaches as well.
Yeah.
You know, it makes spiders.
What if we propose a 1 by 1?
I think kind of the question maybe Ryan's going to is how much do you need to drive on, or do you not need to drive on it when you're mowing, Dustin?
Well, yeah, I get what you said, it'd be 6 inches on each side is.
Yeah, it'd be like a 3-inch post, so you have 4.5 inches on each side. So I agree, I think that ought to work, as long as, I mean, obviously I don't want to make more of a headache on this side of mowing.
I think any size.
Way better than what you have.
Yep.
What's surprised with the price difference? There's not
Not a lot, is there?
Not a lot. I think it's the fretboard.
It's the lowest.
Coming in.
Well, if we're gonna do it, I'd say we just do whatever's most practical for the maintenance crew.
Now, that's flat, right? It's flat with the ground. With the
grass.
Yeah, you could, I mean, I really think you could run over it with your deck, and you'd be just fine, so. I
So
don't,
4 inches is enough to. There.
One of the sizes she's worried about that
6 for sure. Yeah.
And even if they wanna go a little deeper, just cracking, I get what they're saying with the cracking. Are they gonna put expansion joints in that though, so if it does crack, it cracks?
Yeah, we'll want to put some joints in so it cracks in certain spots.
The other problem you run into a little bit would be just any kind of settling or movement. And that, I'm guessing they're compact, obviously they're a little deeper with that, so a 1 by 1.
We could get a price for that.
It would probably be right in the middle, where it'd be the same amount of cement basically as the 18 by 6.
Be close, it's a little more with the 12 by 12, but not a lot.
Yeah. So,
It's 16 square feet more. Or square inches, whatever, sorry, not feet, square inches.
If the 1 by 1 is within like 1,000 of the 2 by 1, I say we just do the 2 by 1 if.
well,
It's probably closer to 47, 46.5 is what I'm betting based on those prices, so you're still probably saving, I would bet $3,000, so. But I would agree, I think we need to do it. I think it's gonna in the long run benefit Dustin and the group and make it look nice and so. But I'm not opposed to the 1 by 1 because that's 144 square inches and that's, you know, I think.
So let's see how much money we have to work with right now. So we had 3.6. And we had, can you go up sunshine just a little bit? Right there, that 3,298, 932. So that gives us 301,000 about, so 300,000 even. And the bleachers and everything are the 122.50, and we can save a little on the trees, we can buy. But I know that there are people that are, so I went and talked to Western Ag. They said they have a grant up to $2,000 that we could have possibly get. And they also, the Rotary Club said that they would participate, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 in trees and things like that. And also labor to probably help install. So that, but if we plan for that and we come out a little bit less, even better. So if we take, let's just say that we do those top ones have to be done. We know that, right?
Yep.
So minus the 122,500, that makes us about 178,000. Can we look at those other ones? So let's say 49, let's say 178, right?
Can you put up a center shade structure after? Is that fairly easy to do, or that? Because I'm thinking really if we just did the shade structure, the shed, and the mow strip, that pretty much covers what we have difference-wise. We can get those three done and not worry about the center shade structure. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, if we did everything but the center shade structure, we'd be within $28,000 of our proposed budget.
That's what I'm thinking, is I think we could do that.
And we could shave off maybe on the shed. I think that's high, unless it's the Taj Mahal shed.
I have to give you worst case scenario.
Yeah.
If it comes back at $48,000, you'll.
Right. But hopefully, I'm guessing we should be able to build that shed for 30.
Yeah, but I agree. I think we need a shed up there, and I do like the mow strip and the shade structure. I just don't know about the center one.
The nice thing about the center shade structure is it keeps kids safe as well. So if we don't go with that, we maybe could look into a netting option that goes over the middle of it. So
Yeah, I thought about foul balls.
Protect the kids from foul balls and stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with Rowdy. On the center shade structure, what do we have to put in? Like, is that, how much of that are the posts? How much of that is the netting, like the actual trampoline type stuff? You know what I mean?
You asked for a price on that one, right?
I did.
So the center one that had actually been looked at is more of a like permanent, what do you want to call it? Gazebo type, almost like pavilion, not necessarily one that you would take the cover down over.
Okay.
The ones over the bleachers are more of the style that have been placed at the park.
Yeah.
It would have a fabric that you take down.
And the reason I ask is just if we could, I mean, if it is going to be a permanent structure that we bolt concrete or something like that, if we can just, when we're pouring the concrete, plan for it, and then we can do a little fundraising and build that. That's something that we can get everything built and then do a little fundraising and add that in the future. You know, in the near future.
Well, and I like Rowdy's idea because it'd be cheaper maybe to get a net if we have the structure there. Maybe just putting a net to start with, and then down the road putting a shade structure.
Would we have to have a different structure though if we put a net up? Because we are building these higher, the backstops are higher than the other ones, and so there is some safety built in there.
Would we have to pour the footings in? Is that what you're thinking for the pillars now? That way it's prepared.
Yeah.
Ready to go up when we
Yeah, I don't think it would change the cost much of what we're already doing.
No, we just want to make a decision on which one we want to go with so we get those in the right spot.
When are they going to pour cement?
Great question.
I'd like to next week, but.
So that's probably the other thing to just talk schedule wise. I know Ryan and I have had a few emails going back and forth. And I know the landscaping sub is already a little worried about doing sod this fall just because it needs to be watered for 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, that was a question I had for Dustin also, because I had a personal conversation with him. Is there any way to get culinary water there, or is it strictly secondary?
It's just strictly secondary.
Well, so you're saying we either do center or we do bleachers. what you're saying, right? The shade structure.
No, I think you, go ahead.
I'll let you answer that because I'm gonna go on a tangent on schedule, so.
Oh, yeah. So what I'm thinking is if we have a drawing of the shade structure, obviously we do the shade structure over the bleachers. If we can get if we knew what shade structure we're looking at, we could at least get that incorporated in the plan so they can move forward. And then I honestly think that the shade structure ought to be something that we talked about fundraising, we haven't done any yet. 200,000 is not a lot to fundraise for this project. I think even by the end of the project, we could get that amount, but at least we'd have everything in place that we could. Is that?
Yep.
Okay, and that's all I was clarifying. Thank you.
So they've started working on fencing up there, if any of you made it up. So they've got the culinary water line basically run. They've started on some fence posts. The grading's essentially done, pretty dang close. I know they started a little bit on sprinklers, but some of it just kind of has come back to getting the lighting in, because there's obviously a lot of conduit that's got to go in the ground to get the power out everywhere. So the concrete's a little dependent on that and a few other things. I think we just kind of need to meet probably as the steering committee and see what everybody's thoughts are. I know, there is probably an opportunity you could get. I know Ryan's asked, there's a chance you could keep the water on through this big sandwich pipeline a little longer. But if it sets in heavy and freezes, then, that might be out too. And you're looking at, I wish I had the number in front of me. I guess I do, kind of. $700,000 for the sod and infill, and I think like 400 of that is sod. And so we don't want to get to where we're risking that sod all dying. And I know there's obviously a desire to get it done, but the steering committee also talked like, if some of that pushes into spring, as long as we can hopefully get it done before tournaments start and things like that would be okay. So I think realistically, that's just a conversation we need to have. There's probably some of that needs to push just to make sure you get the best product for the money you're spending, rather than running the risk of the sod and even some of the concrete if it really gets to that point of not being worth paying for. So
The other thing it allows us to do too, and I'm going to say it again, is fundraise. That allows us to get more people involved by next spring, everything else. And then, the shade structure is a big thing, but there are a couple other things batting cages and other things that were on our list that we've taken off. And so the longer we have more of a budget, the more opportunity we have to get fundraising and things like that, to put some more of this stuff in that we may not be able to do if we do it, by the end of October.
Yeah.
First of November. So any other questions?
No, I would move that we would do the mow strip, but do it one by one, do the maintenance shed, hopefully less than 50, do for sure the shade structure, those three, and then put in at least the.
You mean the shade structure?
The bleachers, yes, and then the center shade structure, at least put in the footings and things, so we could do that. We just need to decide which one, but I still think it makes more sense to prepare and then have it so we can eventually put it in, because I think it would be of value to the community and to the kids and for safety and those kind of things. So.
And then just and then fundraise for the other 200,000.
Yeah,
and we will have a shortfall of that 28,000. So we'd be just go out and fundraise as much as we possibly can in between now. And I did talk to Josh, and we did decide to go ahead and start to organize a fundraising campaign for this. And so it's a little more structured, and we want input from obviously, especially the two councilmen that have been assigned to this project. And I don't know where we're at on that.
I got it back at about 80% drafted.
Okay.
My goal is to have it done by Thursday.
Perfect. And then, so that'll at least get us that far along, and then we'll start a fundraising campaign, and then maybe we can add back in, some of the batting cages and some of those other things that we want to see happen too. Okay.
By the way, that was a motion, yeah.
So Don, one thing that you didn't mention, let's go back, is the benches, bleachers, trees, tables, and garbage can for $122.50. And
And so to add to my motion, you want me to add those 5 things now on the trees though?
because they were extra too, yeah.
But on those trees, it sounds like you have all
Well,
of that.
what we'll do,
We'll budget for it, and then if we
and
can
if we
get,
get less, then
then we can use it
something
elsewhere.
else.
Okay. I'll add that to my motion.
Because those were the original things that we absolutely have to have.
Right, and we assume the bleachers or benches, bleachers and benches would be there, I guess.
So we have those 5 items with $122.50, and then moving forward with 1x1 mow strip and shade structures over the bleachers and the shed. And then just can we get without seeing this, I guess we leave it up
Have the steering committee
to
decide.
the
which
committee
one.
decide, as long as it doesn't exceed 200,000.
You want me to show you a picture of what I kind of had?
If you have it.
Okay. Sorry, I should have that ready up here, but.
And then we'll move on to the next one.
Motion.
Yes,
Was it meant to include stipulation for fundraising, or is that just,
I think so. I think it should, yeah.
okay, what, was there an amount, or how are we wording that?
I would say fundraising to fund the shade structure, the center.
Yeah, minimum shade structure. I think we can get that started easily.
I don't know my shapes. Stop sign or whatever shape, but it's kind of like this.
And it's how big?
It was to fit, what was it, 45 feet, I think.
And does that allow enough room? Is it high enough to get trailers in and out and
Yeah, leave enough room around the edges for your food trucks, trailers to drive around.
Okay.
So that we'd be able to go underneath.
I don't.
Big park ride.
We could like, the trailers, probably not the trailers.
Would they still have room to set up shop on the edges so that they could sell, and then maybe?
Yeah, and then I think the hope here was then we could have, picnic tables and other things that are there that then everybody could sit at.
I would still like the committee to look at it.
And we don't have to do that.
The steering committee?
The steering committee.
Okay, yeah.
I was just doing that to get us a rough number, so we kind of had an idea how much they were.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that design.
Right.
Okay. So the shade structure would be contingent on fundraising,
But we would still put in
but we'd still put in, because at some point we will raise the funds for that.
You get the footings in and this design, do you want the
Steering committee to be able to make that decision.
Yeah.
So that's all encompassed in Don's motion.
Yes, all that. I'm glad Sunshine's here to keep me straight.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
understand it. Any questions?
Hope I'll second that.
Have a second by Councilman Cloward. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that does put us over 28,000. So we have to fundraise for that other, and we'll get working on, yeah.
Did we do the motion for Moscow?
Yes, I did that earlier. Yeah, yep. Right, Sunshine?
Yeah.
Okay. Roosevelt City Public Infrastructure District Policy, Drew and Wyatt.
So tonight, we're just getting an update for the PID policy, and Marcus is zooming in. If you have any questions, Marcus is the man to answer anything on the PID. He's drafted a policy for our review, and Grant is currently reviewing that on behalf of Roosevelt City.
Yeah, does everybody understand? Can you give us a brief overview of what?
Okay, so basically the PID, Public Infrastructure District, is, and we've presented this to you in the past, but just a refresher, This helps in developing areas. Wyatt has proposed his newly annexed property west of town that we've brought into Roosevelt City Incorporated. So this is to help with infrastructure development only for the utilities. There's stipulations on what it can and can't be used for, mainly for roads, sewer, infrastructure. And then it is 15-year, do you have a term on this?
We're still working on that.
Working on a term to be paid back. Yeah, for the bond. Basically, they sell the bond. No risk to the city that we're still reviewing the draft, but as it's been presented to us. So, and any questions, Marcus would be the man to.
Yeah. You can't hear us, right, Marcus?
Yeah, I think that was explained really well. Just to kind of clarify, can you hear me okay? Am I coming through all right?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, great. No, I appreciate you giving me time to speak here a little bit. Happy to answer any questions. And really what it does is, it helps pay for some of this needed infrastructure to bring out the utilities, but the people paying for it are the people that are going to be benefiting from it. So it doesn't encompass or encumber anybody outside of the PID. So current residents of Roosevelt City would never have to worry about, having to pay into the PID or anything like that. It basically is whoever's going to benefit from this development, from this infrastructure, those are the ones that pay for it. And so just that may answer a few questions, concerns with potentially some of the city council wondering if this will ever affect any of their current citizens or anything like that. It absolutely would not. It requires 100% consent to be a part of the PID. So that's typically why it's a developer tool, because they'll own 100% of the land. And then it will be drawn around the boundaries of the land that they own, and or any others that may want to participate and receive the benefits, or as they build out, have those same utilities and roads and everything else as was explained by Drew. So,
Any questions from the council? Some of the things that I'll mention that we discussed, I think it'd be good for the council to hear. There were some concerns that if they bond or this infrastructure is bonded against, who holds the bonds? If they're not paid back, what happens? And those types of things. Because the concern was, will that ever fall back on Roosevelt City or its residents or even the county? And Marcus made it pretty clear that that would happen. And the reason is because whoever purchases those bonds is obligated. They're the ones that are taking the chance of receiving that money as those lots. And so if they don't sell as quickly, we talked about a 30 or 40 year period. After the 30-year period, that can be pushed to 40 years. And then what happens is if that bond is not paid back within that amount of time because the growth doesn't happen that's anticipated, then those that have purchased those bonds basically forfeit that. And no matter whether that's paid back in full or not by the end of that 30 or 40 years, that obligation goes away at that point.
That's exactly right, Mayor. And, just even give a little bit more clarity on that, is that even people that may build in the first phase, so let's say you're one of the first homes that buy a house, build your house in there, you have your limited tax, so however many mill levies that eventually is approved by the city council. Well, let's say the rest of the development doesn't end up happening or goes under. As long as you're paying your property taxes, that individual homeowner, the bondholders can never go after you individually either. So it really protects the homeowners to say they can't try to say that you have to cover the entirety of the bond or anything like that. Your only obligation would be to pay your property tax and the additional levy that's associated with it. And as long as you're paying that, there would never be any recourse or any punishment, even if the rest of the development didn't go up. Or go as planned. So it really is a good mechanism. Obviously, they come at higher interest rates. As you can imagine, there's a lot more risk associated with the taxes and bond with this versus, for instance, Roosevelt City issuing a sales tax bond or something that has quite a bit more collateral or credit to it. So that is kind of the give and take there, but the interest rates typically associated with these are still lower than what you would find for traditional horizontal financing for this type of community. So it is, again, another benefit to the developer to help them save some costs and allow them to build it or put back more capital into the project itself. So.
And then Grant, did you have I know you're working on drafting and getting this ready.
Well, they sent a proposed draft back on July 10th. I don't really have problems with the proposed draft, but I do have some concerns on not the draft, but just the theory of this whole thing. And Marcus is an expert on this. I think that what he's telling you is accurate in the theory of how it works. My concern is that this process has not been an option for very long in state code. And so from my position, evaluating risks to the city, there's not a lot to look at. In fact, there's not really anything for me to look at beyond just what's in state code. And the state code provisions, in my opinion, are pretty skinny for the dollars that can go into this kind of a project. I'm not
meaning vague or.
Well, they're not really vague. It's just, I think that the legislature could have been more thorough in looking at any potential problems that could come up. The intent, the legislative intent in drafting the code, I think is exactly what Marcus is saying. But from my position looking at potential liability for the city, because they're kind of untested, I don't feel like I can stand here and tell you there is no way that this can come back on the city. And in fact, because there are recent provisions in the code, I would expect that if this deal fell apart, that investors would be likely to try to sue the city to recoup some of their costs. And because I feel like the code is a little bit skinny, I think the court would have to make interpretations. And where they haven't done that yet, I can't guarantee you that they wouldn't find a way to say that we're on the hook. Everything that Marcus is representing to you, I think, is the legislative intent, and that's what we would argue in our defense. And I think it's likely that we would be successful. But I just want you to understand that because they're new provisions, I think that there's high dollar amounts that would be at stake here, and the law has not yet been refined by the courts, that I can't stand here and tell you there's no way that it'll come back. I think what Marcus is saying is that in theory, it shouldn't come back. It's untested.
And maybe I can shed a little light on that, if that's all right, Grant.
Sure.
Brings up a very good point. I mean, the last thing, I would never want to have happen, I'm sure any of the city council members would never want to see, is the city getting, caught up in some kind of development deal where they're held liable. Just to give you a little bit of history on this, I'm not sure if very many of you are familiar with the Jordan saga that happened, in 2014, I believe, 2015, where one of the districts issued special assessment bonds, a real estate deal that didn't go well, and the investors, tried to go after the district, and it was just a long, contentious process associated with it. But the tool was actually created to give cities the ability and developers the ability to access tax-exempt markets, but provide a level of separation. So in the past, for special assessment bonds, which were very similar to this type thing, it would actually be issued by the city. And so the city would be responsible for the issuance of bonds, but the legal documents would say the city's not liable, this is a name only, but the city then would be responsible for collecting and foreclosure and all these different things that the city's basically said, we're not doing this. This gets us too much involved. We'd love to help, best of luck on your project, but we're not going to kind of fall into this trap of helping because there is some potential liabilities involved. And I think Grant has, especially in those cases, I 100% agree. In this case, they said, okay, well, what could the cities do to kind of help in areas that they want to, but also, again, create another level of separation. And so that's where the PID came from. And this isn't a new model, at least as far as the country goes. It is new here in Utah, but there's different things. Municipal utility districts or MUDs down in Texas, metro districts in Colorado, Belarus in California. So each state kind of has their own unique way of doing these types of offerings. I would say Utah's is definitely the most conservative, with that you cannot collect operating revenues, that it's only for the capital projects, so that it basically dies once the bond is paid off, and a few different things like that. But I think one point to mention is Grant is right that the city can't prevent, no matter what any of us do, right? Somebody can always try to sue the city as recourse for one reason or another. As mentioned, I don't believe that would hold up. As he said, that they would argue that, this was arm's length, this is the PID, we're not involved after this point, we're just the grading authority, and then it's through the PID, and that's kind of that extra level of separation. So I do see where maybe some of those concerns or potential concerns would come from, but, I feel like anybody could get sued for anything. It's just the unfortunate nature of what we do or what cities have to do in some relative ways. But long story short, this mechanism has been used in Ida, it's been used in Hurricane, it's been used in Grantsville, it's been used in Erda, it's been used in Morgan County. So they're being used all across the state. So just be aware, you're not having to pioneer this alone. This isn't something that you're the only ones doing, and so an investor would be able to kind of look at you. Any decision made on this would affect the entire state of Utah, which would be hundreds of millions of dollars of debt that's already been issued to date, including similar things like the inland port and things like that as well. So I would say, it's always the discretion of the city on what they want to do, but I feel like this isn't. You wouldn't be alone, I guess. You wouldn't be the trailblazers. There's obviously been many cities and counties before you that have already approved these. They've already issued debt. We haven't seen, and hopefully we never will see one of a development that didn't, go as indicated, and perhaps lawsuits come up. I'm sure, given long enough, that eventually that will happen. And we would hope that, with everything put into place and all the legal nuances, the bond documents, the legal documents, that the cities and the counties would always be held harmless. But if the judge ever made a ruling against a city or a county, it wouldn't just affect that. It would affect billions of dollars across the state at this point for these type of transactions. So sorry, that's a lot of information. I'm not sure what the point was actually with all of it, but I would just say I think these, there's no way of telling at least yet because we haven't seen a lawsuit or anything here in Utah on what a judge would decide, but I think it would be a very, very challenging case to go after a city or a county because again, this is what this is created to do, is provide separation both legally and liable for cities and counties to help developers or developments that they want to see happen within their boundaries. So,
I don't disagree with anything that Marcus said there. And he's right that there is some authority in other jurisdictions, that would be persuasive authority of the courts, not binding authority. And the way our law is written is a little bit different. I think that the level of risk is fairly low, but the dollars at stake is high. And so I just want to make sure that you understand that from my position, because the law has not been challenged in Utah yet, I can't stand here and tell you there's no way it'll come back on the city. I can tell you there's a lot of things we could argue in our defense to prevent it, but I don't know how it will turn out.
Sure. Thanks, Grant. And thanks, Marcus. That's very, very well put. And I think with anything we do in the city, there is a certain amount of liability. I think the council just needs to know that and be aware of that. And I appreciate both of you explaining that very well. One other question, Marcus, if you're still there.
Yeah.
And that is, so when this bond is issued, does that additional assessment, is it put on some type of a tax notice, or who collects that then if it's not the city or the county? How is that collected?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So assuming that this, depending, so without trying to get into the weeds too much, so potentially the districts that issue two sets of bonds. One would be the limited tax obligation, which is where they would use the mill levy that the city dictates to them. So if you approve 6 mills or a tax rate of 6 mils on this, then they can assess that on the properties that they own.
That's a triple O
As they
state.
develop it. So those would actually go through the county auditor. And so they would just put that similar to a line item, like you would see a special service district or some kind of other improvement district. And so every year they would have a mill levy of X amount based off the taxable value, and that would generate revenue. And those would be the revenues pledged to pay back the bonds over the lifespan of the district, which is typically that 30 to 40 year mark, as you mentioned earlier, Mayor. For the assessments, those would be recorded with title and everything else. So if anybody were to look at the lots or anything like that, they would know that there is an assessment included on that. But again, all those bonds would be issued through the district's name. The city would not be involved on the issuance. They would not have their name on the issuance. Again, they would have that degree of separation. The district would have its own board compiled of landowners. So eventually the property owners, the homeowners of that area would be the board of the PID until that bond is paid off and then it would dissolve.
So if, one last question, and then if any of the council have questions, but where that would actually be mill levy, it would come on the tax notice. The county would be the ones to collect that. Is that correct? And then it would go back to the.
Technically, it would go back to the PID, but the bondholders would require it to go to a trustee to go towards the bonds payment.
Sure.
And so it's not, what's that?
And so all I'm thinking is if somebody doesn't pay their taxes and the county doesn't collect that, those are just assessed in the tax sale of the property after 5 years, whatever it is, and then paid at that point?
Correct. So similar to this is the big difference between the limited GOs, as I'll call them, or the mill levy bonds and the special assessments, is that the mill levy bonds, people actually have a little bit of a grace period versus, they could have a 90-day foreclosure process with the old system. But with the mill levy bonds, if you don't pay your property tax, basically you would just go through what, any type of property tax foreclosure, which I believe, as you mentioned, is the 5 years, and then eventually it would go to a property tax sale. The revenues generated from that would go down to pay all their liabilities and back taxes, and then, from there, to whomever at that point. But yeah, you're exactly right. That's how it would work, and that's the information that the investors are aware of too. So they know that, if somebody, let's say there's 200 properties, if a few of them aren't paying, then they would become delinquent on their property tax notice. There's procedures through Utah's property tax collections and eventual foreclosures that would happen to make them whole.
Okay. Well, that answers my questions. Any other questions from the council?
I don't have any questions, but I love that there's programs like this that can, because in Roosevelt, it's hard to get water and sewer out to some areas, and this is a good option, I think, so.
Good opportunity to get it there.
Yeah.
And Mayor, if I could just, make one more comment, just so the board knows, or the city council knows, you're not approving a PID tonight. You're basically just saying, we just want some kind of policy, some kind of template in place, so as people want to do a PID, that they can look at this and say, hey, this is what the city would potentially look for as they're evaluating PIDs. This doesn't bind your hands. This doesn't force you to approve PIDs. It doesn't do anything like that. It's really just a roadmap that we feel like is helpful for yourself as well as future city council, so you don't get, people with a duplex coming and saying, I want a PID, where in reality it just doesn't make sense and certain things like that. So just be aware that the PID policy is when it's eventually, or if it is eventually approved by the city council, we still have to come back with the specifics related to why it's PID. And then that would get into the details of why it's development, what he's requesting, the mill levies, everything associated with that. And that would be a different decision that the city council makes on his PID specifically, and then all other future PIDs would be individualized like that, as well as a public hearing required too. So just know the PID policy is just something we feel like is helpful for cities. So, you don't get a residential PID asking for 15 mils or 1.5%. I mean, some things just do not make sense. As Grant pointed out, the state code is very vague in a lot of areas, and even though it gives permissions, some of those permissions shouldn't be taken. And Mike's very well aware of that. We've had very good conversations with him, and so you'll see that as part of our proposal to the city when the policy's in place and we come before you with White's bid proposal. So.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Seeing none, do
I
we
would-
want to move forward with?
Yeah, I think I'll move to approve, or that we should approve the policy, and then we can look at bids individually based on what Marcus said. I think this is just the first step in the process, so.
Okay. Motion?
So you're motioning to approve a policy?
Approve
Just
this
the-
policy, the
well-
public, or the,
It would be probably to move forward with
the policy.
creating.
Okay, that, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll amend that. Thanks for clarifying.
I would second it, yeah.
Yes.
Creating policy.
Second by Councilman Barrett. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Sorry we kept you so long. Craig, you're up.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you down at the league here in a couple days or tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. Okay. This is for the sport, the Innovation Hub, bid approval / extension.
Okay, we went ahead with the bid based on the council's approval, and we had one eligible contractor, and then show up to the pre-bid meeting, and then he was unable to put a bid together for us, and he called me and told me he wouldn't be able to. But anyway, so as a result, we had no bids on the project. So we felt it was in the best interest of the city to go ahead and have, just call that the bid non-responsive, and to go ahead and do a new bid where we have a new pre-bid meeting and a new bid opening. We thought that the timing, with the difference in the timing, we might have some better success in having some bidders. So that's where we're at. We want to ask for an approval to bid this, advertise for bids again.
I have a question. So, how do we put these out for bid? I should know this by now, but is it the same process for every engineer? Or is it something that we're advertising, or that the engineering firm puts out there, and how is word spread? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. We advertise through the city. We send the information to Sunshine. She posts it on the state website. That's, meets there's rules that have to be met on bidding. And then, potential bidders see that, and they contact me to get set of plans and that kind of stuff. The other thing that is done is word of mouth. Sometimes we call our contractor friends and say, hey, there's bids out. Why don't you bid on it? That kind of stuff. So any method that we can use to get people interested, that's what we do.
And I think that's one thing, I know a few, and this would help me contact, I've already contacted one today that would be interested in bidding, so that's at least one more. And if any of the council know any contractors that would be interested, like Craig said, word of mouth, even though it's publicized, a lot of people aren't looking on the state website and other places to find those. They're just, so we might have to contact some of those, so.
You wonder if that's the reason that we didn't really get any bids, is because, is it a time issue, or is it just not?
I think everybody right now has all the work they want.
Okay.
And I really do believe, because I did have people say they're too busy. Anyway, it's a small project. It really is. I mean,
right.
It's not a huge attractor.
So on this though, just so that the council's aware, I think the deadline would be the 13th. Is that what we were anticipating, or how would the deadline be?
The 20th. The bids are due on the 20th.
The bid will be on
the bid walkthrough, the pre-bid meetings on the 13th, 10 a.m.
And so we would want to make sure that if we did have anybody that we thought might be interested, they would need to be to that bid meeting on the 13th. Well, they don't need to be, but it would be helpful if they were.
Well, they are eligible.
If they
eligible to
don't.
bid if they don't show up. The 13th is really the one they need to be to first, and then they can mail it in their bid. So they need to attend that meeting the 13th.
I would move do we need to extend the time or
Just a new bid.
just do a new bid? So I move we go to a new bid for the Innovation Hub.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Second by Councilman McLeod. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thanks, Greg. Procurement policy.
Mayor, if I may, real quick, after speaking with our city attorney, if I can readdress item J real quick. In the motion, it was made to move forward with the bid policy. We had that motion about 2 months ago to move forward with it. Tonight, the proposal was to accept the bid policy that was prepared, and Grant has reviewed that. And so we can continue forward, we can bring back the bid policy, but I just wanted some clarification whether or not it was to continue to move forward with looking at the bid policy or actually approve the bid. Now, again, not the bid itself, just the bid policy. And again, Marcus has sent that to Grant.
So, yeah, or if you've already reviewed it and there were things you didn't like about it, we can work on it.
I don't think we had time to.
I don't remember seeing it, so maybe if you could extend it, and I would just say, let's not approve till next time, the policy part, so. I don't know, what do you think?
Was Wyatt expecting that to be approved as is tonight, or was he just saying move forward and then?
I think it's up to you guys. They were wanting to have it approved, but if we've got provisions, I think it needs to be reviewed.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, so I would prefer to see it before I say let's approve it.
Did you see anything, and I agree, but did you see anything in a grant that would be concerning?
No, not in the policy, the suggested policy that they sent over. No revisions that I would suggest. But like he said, it really is just laying out a process that they can come in and apply under. And everything in their suggested policy has provisions for that. And then you would make decisions on a case-by-case basis whether or not you're allowed.
So you're comfortable if we just approve that then, or?
I am, but if you guys, well, for my review, I'm comfortable with it, but your review is the most important thing. So if it wasn't in your packet, my suggestion would be that we put it on the next agenda, make sure that it gets forwarded to you, and then you can make a motion after you vote.
Yeah, I would prefer that.
And I would think that if Grant's comfortable with it, how it is, obviously we want to review that and have a final approval by next meeting. With that information, I think that Wyatt and Marcus can move forward with preparing something, and they could be approved simultaneously. We could make a few, if there were anything found by the council that needed to be adjusted or anything by the next meeting, we could do them simultaneously if needed. I don't think that they will be ready to present by next October anyway, but at least they have the green light to kind of, they know the direction of the council. Do we feel inclined to move forward that way?
I think that's what they were looking for, is just approval of our policy so they can move forward with theirs and bring it back to council. So I think that's
Okay, so that sounds good.
Okay, no more action on it, perfect. Real quick with policy or procurement policy change, there was a meeting held last week. I unfortunately wasn't unable to attend. Councilman Busenbark was there. I believe the recommendation is that we get our procurement policy to essentially match the state code, not spending limits particularly, but the process and everything. Councilman, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to.
I did
prepare tonight.
The only thing I would add, and I don't disagree, but I want to make, I trust our employees, and I want to make sure that we're providing the tools that and things have gone up, so, we need to maybe look at some of those amounts, and, talking to Kirby, he was saying, if his was 2,500, that would help him, or I don't know what Dustin would need, but just raise that enough so they can do their job without having to always come to council or whatever. But at the same token, there's still checks and balances to make sure, if something comes through that looks a little iffy or whatever, and call Dustin, how come you have $1,000 in hot dogs, or whatever, right? Because he had a party. But I think with the amounts, we need to maybe look at that.
Yeah, and I think that, that overall 10,025, I think that's probably still adequate. But looking at the lower amounts for the employees, one of the things that I think will help with what you're talking about, and we reviewed this again today, and it is state code, that every single purchase, no matter how big or how small, should go through a purchase order process.
We have that in place. So
Yeah.
But it's not being.
It is now.
Well, with the Tyler, they're able to do it easier, right?
Much easier.
Will help with the transparency and making sure that those expenditures, even though they may be a little higher, are being kept track of in a way that is consistent with state code. And yeah.
I thought somebody mentioned though, the state code allowed for a little higher on some that.
The state code does allow higher. And my biggest concern from the city manager wasn't necessarily my spending limit. I'm more concerned about the employee. That was my concern in wanting to.
And that's the impression I got talking to the employees, that the spending limits with inflation and stuff, they have to, get a requisition or whatever for, $1.98 piece that they could just run down and get. And so we do need to update those. And I just hope that we would set those limits reasonable, but that would allow them to be able to do things so they don't feel like they have to wait a week or whatever to get it done, that they can take care of it that day if they need to. And sometimes there's emergencies they need.
The other thing I noticed in the state code that is inconsistent with ours is the approval, who approves, things like that. It is the budget officer of the city. The budget officer of the city is our city manager. Normally it's the city mayor. That responsibility has been delegated to him through ordinance, and so we're off a little bit on that too, with not only our policy but how we have been functioning, and so we want to make sure that was addressed in that policy. But
so tonight is more just an update. We don't have it prepared for you, and I do want to publicly apologize to Councilman Baird. He was planning on being at that meeting. Unfortunately, where I was, I couldn't call him, and he didn't want me to tell him where I was. But I do apologize for that. But we will give it a further update. This is one of those policies we want to make sure we have exact. When it comes to spending those sacred funds, we want to do it not only the legal way, but the right way as well.
Right.
So this will be a process as we go through where we get multiple updates.
And just, I'm going to throw this out there real quick, and then we don't have to belabor it anymore. But this is kind of a precursor to what we will do with the Arts, Parks, and Rec Committee. Because right now, I feel like we're almost choking them out, treating them like the employees can't spend more than $10 without whatever. And so we'll want, as soon as we get our employee procurement policy in place, taking a look at the Arts, Parks, and Rec, and making that to where it's adequate, but it's not.
See, and that's not what, when I talked to the employees, that's not the impression I got. It sounded like they had a little more leeway than the employees did in talking to them. I'm not saying that's the impression I got talking to the employees, Mayor. So I do agree we need to look at it regardless. But the difference is we have city employees that we hire to do a job, and we need them to do the job. Arts Park Rec are not necessarily employees, and they're doing recreation, and we do want to support them and make sure they're able to do what they need to, but we want to make sure it's within reason as well and following, policy, whatever that is.
I agree, but that assumption, in my opinion, is wrong.
Well, like I said, I don't have data to support either way. I'm just telling you what I was told.
For the record.
I agree with that, yeah. It's a hassle.
Yeah. So that assumption is incorrect.
Okay.
But we do need to, in both areas, we need to have the flexibility necessary to carry out those functions without being so cumbersome that we're jumping over dollars to save dimes because of how difficult. And the purchase order process that we'll have that is in place now, ought to function similarly with our Arts, Parks and Rec. When they have an expenditure, it should be as easy as saying, hey, we need this for an activity. And right now, what they have to have, so I'll show the distinction very briefly. So what the Arts, Parks and Rec has been told is you cannot spend any amount until you have a meeting where it's determined and everybody votes that you can spend that amount. Right now, the staff can spend up to $10,000 without coming before the council at all. And for our city manager, without, yeah. And so
the distinction I make there is, because we're trying to have Arts Park and Rec have the same standard as the city employees. So when a new thing comes up that they want to spend money on that's never been discussed before, it needs to go before the committee, similar to if an employee brings up something that council's never heard of, we can't spend money on that until it's been put into the budget.
you can actually, right in it, we read it today. If you have something that is budgeted.
If it's in the budget. So
Yeah.
we're talking about things that aren't in the budget.
Here's the difference with the Arts, Parks and Rec, and we can discuss this at a later date too. These are things that we can discuss. But we've already given this Arts, Park and Rec a budget to do Arts, Park and Rec. There needs to be the checks and balances of where that money's going, absolutely. They can make a generic, hey, we're gonna spend this on activities this year, and it would cover basically all the expenditures if something were to come up. But anyway, we'll talk about that and just see where that ends up, but I agree, there needs to be some work done on both.
Would that also include, because I know Arts Park is charged for some things, and that's a little bit difficult, I think, with the city if we don't have that on a fee schedule or something.
Yeah,
So,
clarification.
okay.
And Grant and I have talked about that, and we're trying to decide where that lands in our resolution. So there's been, and I'll just say it how it is, there's been some disagreement between some of our staff and the ability for the Arts, Parks and Rec to charge. In our resolution, it does say that they can fundraise. And so how do you define fundraising, then how does that relate to state code? So we're trying to work that out too, as far as making sure that those lines aren't crossed or blurred or grayed, but that we allow them the ability to fundraise, like our resolution says, as long as we're not in non-compliance with the state code. And so we're working through that right now.
And that, I just want to make sure that was also addressed in policy.
Good point. Anything else on that?
So that's why I'm still here.
Yep. Let's go for it.
Okay.
Why don't we just give and let's just.
Okay. We do have employees that can present on each one of these as well. Okay. So I have the whole packet here. Nobody is under a time crunch.
Yeah.
So I'll speak rather quickly. The first one, though, I do want to give a quick update on our surplus process. That worked extremely well on one hand and extremely
I didn't hear about the surplus.
So for the backhoe, we anticipated receiving about $40,000. We got $62,000. So that was actually great. The water tender, we had 0 bits on that one. So one did exceptionally well, one did not. So the first thing on your thing is for a case backhoe.
See, there was a couple of us that didn't even know that was open.
It was advertised, website, Facebook, everywhere. Yeah.
I actually saw it. I found both.
All the places I don't look.
Well, I checked special. Just kidding.
Next time we'll put it on our X account.
Yeah, I wasn't.
I call Twitter, you know.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yes, so one did good. So the next time around, just so you know, we're going to try the online one as well. So we can compare everything. We want to make sure we do the best. So with the backhoe, we actually planned on using the amount that we got from surplusing that. We actually, just so your information, we were offered $26,000 for trade-in. We anticipated making 40 on the sale. We actually made 62. So fantastic. So we actually plan on coming back to council. If you'll remember, Kirby said we're going to have to ask for additional funds to buy our new backhoe. We don't need to do that now. We actually have extra funds. So the first one is for an estimated cost of $127,879. Estimated time of acquisition, 90 days from date of order. We'll actually have $4,600 additional in this account that we don't have to expend. So that's a great one on that first one.
We got bids on those.
Yes,
Okay,
it was through the state contract on that one.
excellent.
These first three are all Kirby. He's out of town. That's why I'm presenting these. The second is for Earl Spence. The estimated cost $26,720. We had $23,000 budgeted. However, as you know, prices have gone up like crazy, just over $4,000. So the proposal is we take the extra $4,000 from the backhoe, apply it here. Doesn't cost the city any additional funds there. So that's the second one. The third one is a replacement for A-frames for the snowplows. The cost on these went way more than we expected when we got our bids on there. So the proposal is to buy 2 out of the 3, and we currently budget $15,000. That's still not enough, but if we take $5,600 from the technical professional budget, which Kirby has in his, which does align with this, we can pay for 2 of the 3. So by taking some extra funds just out of Kirby's budget, we can get 2 out of the 3 funds. That's also on that.
I know those he needs really badly because
Yes, that is one of the time is of the essence as well. That's why 2 out of 3 is, hey, let's get it done. So those are the 3 proposals from the Public Works Department. Do you want me to continue, or do you want the department heads that have so wonderfully waited to come up?
You're doing good, Josh. Good strong.
Okay, I'll just go quickly, and
If anybody feels strongly, feel free to jump up when it's your turn.
the next one is from Mr. Claiborne for our fireworks cargo trailer. As you know, the sports complex, we had to move the shipping container there. Estimated cost is $18,000. That'd be for accessories and everything. It'll be ordered upon approval. We have $20,000 approved on our capital project budget. This would be from Esquire RV, best fits our needs, that we use to make the fireworks show. Ryan, correct me, but we did get 3 bids on this one because this is not a state bid. And just so you know, he did have to call it out. He had to drive out to Earl to actually pick up the bid. So I'm glad he did that because he wanted to make sure that we got bids. So that is the next one. Continuing on, this one is the Verkada upgrades. These are our access to all of our buildings. Right now, we're on different systems. Any technical questions here, I'll definitely have to refer to Brock. Supplier Spectra, estimated cost of $45,000. We do it after approval. This will help with our internal controls. There's an outdated system that we're using on about half of our facilities. This would allow us to be on the same system on updated software to get in. Brock, you might.
Do you have questions? Do you want more clarification on that, or you good?
It's for the city building, fire, PD, parks, public restrooms, and the pool.
And how much was it again?
$45,000. I will tell you, the school, Uinta School District, I was going into their building with their superintendent, or no, not superintendent, their athletic director. They just did the entire school district on Verkada, and he said it was about $3 million. I heard they did theirs a little over the top, but.
And what do we have budgeted?
50. Okay, so it's a little bit under than what I budgeted.
It's a good system. That's what I use on all my facilities as well.
Yeah, awesome.
So
Okay, the next one is from Mr. Brown on the driving range netting. This is estimated cost of $47,945.10. And this one is, I believe this is the one, correct me if I'm wrong, Edwin, we already paid the down payment. This is just to make the final payment on there.
Correct, yes.
So this is one of the ones from before.
it's already installed as well, right?
Yes, we approved it, but council only approved the original down payment. This is since the last this more. The next is from Mr. Glines, our Parks Director, for the shade structure, thank you, over Central Park Playground. Again, this is already installed. We made the down payment. This is to pay the additional amount. It was installed at 8/18. Hopefully everybody was able to attend the ribbon cutting, and you're in a happier place than I was.
I missed it, but I heard a lot of positive.
Yes, all of it's positive.
It was great.
It was awesome.
Thanks for the follow through with that.
Sure thing. Okay, the next one, we do not need to do on that one because it is under the spending limit. And then the last one is for the Gator utility vehicle for the Parks Department. For Mr. Glines as well, it's a John Deere for $13,307.62. We had budgeted just under $12,000, but the bid came back about $1,300 over budget. They would like to utilize $1,500 of savings from another capital project to cover that as well. So no additional funds, other than using unspent funds from this one on the ice skater lining, using on this one to cover it. And those are the capital project requests.
Thank you. And one of the things that we learned very briefly is that if there is an item that is budgeted and we don't need that money for that, our budget officer has the ability to move and approve money to be spent out of the line item for another one.
Yes.
So appreciate you mentioning where you come up with that money and everything else. And, any questions on any of that?
I move we approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you so much. Roosevelt City Attorney contract. We are short on time. Grant said he's okay if we discuss that next meeting. So we'll push that to the next meeting. I feel bad. We got to get. Okay. Next, election design for city offices approval.
Give me that next one as well.
Okay, let's go ahead and forego that one. Website redesign project. Sunshine?
If you have time, I would like to. So either they like.
Okay, let's skip this one, John, and that will be our last one, and we'll just go through. Do you have anything else, Josh, on your city manager's report while you're up there?
Just remember September 19th, employee barbecue, no city council that.
Yep, and I will need as much help as I can get from the council. So I'll be occupied with other stuff. But I'm at the point where I can basically say, no, but I won't do it in a public meeting. So, all right, let's go ahead, Sunshine, let's have you present and then we'll finish out.
Okay, so just a quick refresher. Last winter, we went over some of the data from our site, most viewed pages, areas where we're really successful, like the aquatic center, areas where we struggle, like with the animal shelter, as far as page content goes. You guys probably aren't constantly on our city's webpage, but this is our current webpage. It's not a very eye-catching design, and some of our colors actually don't meet ADA compliance as far as contrast and things like that. You also approved holding a photo contest to generate content for the website redesign. And this, Edwin and I have been working with our service providers.
Wow, I like
so we
that.
get a free annual redesign, and this is what they've come up with. We provided them with the pictures from our redesign. This can obviously be changed. Everything on here can be changed. Text can be changed. Graphics can be changed.
Can you have something that just kind of scrolls through some of those?
That actually, so this example that you're looking at is what they call an active JPEG. So there's only so many clickable features on this draft, but that is a setting that we can have where these pictures will automatically scroll.
Yes.
And everything that they've put in their design is from our photo contest, and I want us to continue to use that content. We'll probably switch out this as the landing picture for something that looks a little more like Roosevelt. But that's what they based their design on, was the photo contest pictures I provided to them, and then our blue city logo.
Can we get some of our parks in there?
We can get anything you guys want in here. There, as far as the photos and what the text says, that's all subject to change. I can change that every day if I felt like it. What really needs to be approved, what I need to say is good to go on September 8th for our designers, is what they call the bones of the design. So having these large graphic buttons instead of this smaller cluster here. We actually had them design in a box. I had to program in our social media feed to our website, so it doesn't really, the structure doesn't look great. They've actually designed that in, so it has its own box. Our events calendars changed slightly just to look a little bit nicer, but it's really just the bones that you need to be okay with moving forward.
And can we get, when we move forward with the process, a little bit of feedback? There's some things that just when I'm clicking through, looking for certain things, it's a little bit tricky to find.
Our sitemap needs a ton of help. Unfortunately, that's not unfortunately, that's kind of me job. Whereas this is the design. And so I have been, and I can show you the map, I've been mapping out everything and making plans for remapping and redrawing everything. And that is something that I am also working on simultaneously with the design is restructuring our site maps so things are easier to find.
Sunshine, you said those bottom, those 8, those are the most popular that people are looking.
So these are going to be what we want. These are there is most popular links here, and I can change these very regularly. These can be changed, it just takes more work, and these are what we discussed as being important to have quick access
I
to.
do like the graphics and the color and the look. It looks a lot better than the other one.
I agree. I think it looks cleaner and it's easier to see what's going on.
So we need approval to move forward with the design?
I believe we approved this, the design.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. We have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Howard, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're going to push the capital projects, if that's okay, Ryan.
We do need to approve the purchase orders.
Right. Are there anything in particular that needs to be mentioned tonight on those?
No, you're good, it's fine.
Anything that we need approved or any updates?
What I was gonna show you tonight is on the website, just when you leave and you get a minute, go under government, then special projects. If you hit special projects, it'll have an update that we're doing hopefully weekly.
Okay.
Just what's happening on each project, new pictures, just the latest and greatest, so that way you guys are more informed and the public. So if anybody asks you about a project, have them go to the website, special
Well, and if
projects.
they're out and about, there's the QR code. You can scan the QR code on those banners and it will direct you to this page.
Perfect.
Yeah, so.
Thank you. That was excellent.
Mayor, I move we approve the purchase orders.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the purchase orders. I'll entertain that. Any seconds to that?
Second.
Second by Councilman Howard, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Committee reports, we'll forgo. Drew, there was an item for discussion for next meeting. Okay. I'm sure it'll just come up on the next meeting. Okay. And I don't see any reason for closed session.
Move we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Howard.